Good evening and welcome to Communities in Place Policy and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you for attending. I'm Councillor Finnegan. I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. I'm supported by my Vice Chair, Councillor Jeffrey, and our officers and directors and Cabinet Member. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit at the rear of the chamber and then to the central point, which is located outside the Lynn Cross pub. May I also remind everyone in the chamber to please switch off your mobile phones or turn them to silent. If members of the committee or other councillors wish to speak, could you please clearly raise your arm? I don't want to miss anybody, so keep on trying to get my attention and turn on the microphone on before speaking and then off when finished. I think it'd be useful if we introduced everybody this evening, and I'd like to start with those on my right.
I'm Paul Anderson, Director of Communities.
I'm Nick Jenkins, Head of Leisure and Culture.
I'm Carol Algar, Corporate Project Manager.
Clive Burley, Corporate Project Manager.
Ruth Fletcher, Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure.
Thank you. The first item tonight is apologies for absence. I received apologies from Councillor Vickers, Councillor Grant, Councillor Utan, and Barbara Charles is also not attending this evening. Do we have any other apologies of absence? Okay. Item number 2, minutes. Sorry.
Did you want apologies for having to leave early as well?
Thank you for letting me know.
Okay, 6:30.
Okay, item number 2 is minutes. Thank you, Judy, for producing the minutes. We haven't received any comments on the minutes. Any comments this evening? I'm happy that they're an accurate reflection of the meeting held on the 23rd of July. Are we all in agreement? Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is actions from the last meeting. As Barbara Charles is not here this evening, I've got a summary from Catherine, and I'd like to report that following the overview and scrutiny meeting on the 23rd of July 2025, Horsham District Council wrote a letter to the inspector conducting the examination of the Horsham District Local Plan. This letter indicated that we had received additional evidence relating to the duty to cooperate and had requested that a hearing session be reopened to hear this additional evidence from our partner authorities, primarily Crawley Borough Council and Mid Sussex District Council. This letter is available on the examination pages of the HDC website. A response was received from the inspector on the 1st of September 2025. The inspector has requested that additional evidence be submitted to him for further scrutiny and to be able to him to determine the next steps. Officers are now in the process of preparing a response to the inspector containing this additional information. This will be made available on the council's website in due course. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the committee this evening? Thank you. Item number 5, announcements from the Chair or Chief Executive. I don't think there's any tonight from Chief Executive either, thank you. Item number 6, resolutions of call-in decisions. There are none either. Item number 7, responses of the full Council or Cabinet. There are none. So we move on to item number 8, Capitol Theatre refurbishment update. You'll find this on pages 9 to 17 of your pack. In September, the Cabinet will be recommended to agree the Capitol refurbishment as set out in the report. On Monday, at our other scrutiny committee, the financial aspects were discussed as we move from REBA Stage 3 to REBA Stage 4. Obviously, there'll be some overlap with our discussions tonight, but if we could try to stick to the non-financial aspects, in particular, the seating and the heating system and the council policy alignment. I, for one, love the Capitol. It's a fantastic community space. I'm going to now hand over to the Head of Leisure and Culture to provide us with an update. So it's over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see some familiar faces back from Monday, but forgive me if we cover a little bit of the same ground. I'm going to take you on a fairly whistle-stop tour of how the plans are progressing around the refurbishment of the capital. Within this, we will touch on the REBA framework we are working to, the project timeline, resourcing, cost projections and budget, although we looked at these on Monday, as we've said. And so the update will focus mainly on the improvements we are making to the venue and on some of the things we now can't, unfortunately, achieve. As a reminder, the overarching aim of the project was to ensure that the Capitol Theatre remains up to date and a cultural asset to the district and able to provide access to high quality theatre and cinema by replacing end-of-life fixtures and fittings, improving seating in the auditorium and cinemas and enhancing the overall customer experience and offer. Included within this was the aspiration of reducing carbon emissions to meet the council's target of becoming net zero by 2030 and to maintain and improve the venue so it provides a cultural and social benefit to the district. As a rule of thumb, investment is needed every 20 years to keep the venue open, operational and compliant. I'm going to hand you over to Carol now, and she's just going to give you a brief sort of introduction to what we mean by REBA stages, because I think it's important just to have that as a foundation in terms of how we're working as a project. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, just as Nick said, it's important to kind of just provide you with some reassurance about how the project is working really and the project team. So, as Nick said, we are following the REBA plan of work, which is the Royal Institute of British Architects plan of work, and it's an established shared framework for design and construction projects. So the first two stages, the strategic definition and preparation and brief, has already been undertaken up to about 2023. So stage 2, the concept design. This stage principally focuses on refining the project brief through engagement, developing the architectural concept drawings, exploring building materials, initial cost planning and assessing strategic risks. Stage 3, which is what we've just completed, is the spatial coordination. So developing a spatially coordinated and validated design. Undertake engineering analysis, test the design against the budget and the cost information is refined at this stage. Stage 4 is technical design, so developing the architectural and engineering designs into comprehensive, detailed information for construction. And at the end of stage 4 is a robust, buildable package ready for tendering construction. So we've just completed stage 3 and we're heading into sort of stage 4 now. Now, if I give you a very brief overview of the timeline we're working to. So as you may remember, we had an original project scope. And Nick's going to touch more on that previously about what the original project scope was, but we were working last year with a different contractor, different organisation, and we'd completed REBA stage 2, and the original cost plan was broadly in line with the budget that we had, which is 10.7 million for the original project. REBA stage 3 last year, with the original scope of the project, it was scheduled between July and November, but the project was terminated in October 2024 because of escalating costs. So the cost that we had at the stage 3 with the previous enlarged scope of the project was 13.3 million. And it's important to note that actually at this stage of the project, that didn't include lots of the other costs that we were having to include in the actual scope. So, for example, the kind of audio-visual elements and the technical elements and advertising and design. So the project team has moved really, really quickly this year. And there's just a very high-level summary of the stages that we've been undertaking. So following the project termination in October, we had a review of the project scope using the information that we'd already sort of received with the previous project. And that was between October and 24 to earlier this year. And we were considering our procurement options. We had the surveys and validations undertaken. So there was obviously a period of downtime at the theatre. So these were undertaken, significant surveys and validations undertaken between March and April 2025. I'd say we've just completed REBA stage 3, that spatial coordination, the element of design between May and to this month at the end of August. We're anticipating stage 4 design completion this week. There is most of the designs are complete, but there's just some work around the accessibility in the auditorium that just needs completing. So at the moment, we're expecting the stage 4 cost plan to be with us on the 9th of October. And the programme timeline will be in contract with the construction contractor in November, with construction due to start in January running till October, and a practical completion and handover October, November 2026, the next year. I did touch on the REBA design stages earlier, and it is important to understand the cost planning at each stage of the project. We've completed stage 3, and the costs in this presentation are based on the stage 3 cost plan. So the professional design team that we're working with has worked hard to ensure the information is based on the latest industry information, and sufficient contingency for project risk and inflation has been worked into the financial projections. But cost certainty will only come at the end of stage 4 once the final detailed designs have been put out to competitive tendering. There will inevitably be change to the cost projection, bearing in mind where we are in that project timeline, but the project team is confident that the total project cost will be brought within the budget, and there'll even be opportunities for betterment in the projections in some areas. So just to give you a bit more reassurance about actually how we're working as a project team, we have a really competent project team that's been put together working on this. It is a complex project with lots of unknowns. The last refurbishment was carried out in 2003, and before that in 1983. And actually some parts of the existing mechanical, electrical and plumbing systems date back to 1983. So the project team obviously got Director of Communities as the project sponsor, Head of Leisure and Culture, the Capital Venue and Productions Manager, Head of Property and Facilities, Head of Finance and Performance, the procurement manager and the corporate project manager, and they're all forming the core project team. And there's also other staff, specialist staff that are joining the project as and when needed. So for example, the building services engineer from the property team is supporting us on the mechanical, electrical and plumbing, and also the capital staff who've obviously got specialist knowledge of the bar and catering elements in the box office. And the project team is also working very closely with Wilmot Dixon design team, meeting weekly, and everyone on the project fully understands and is reminded of the budgetary envelope. We've also had 2 internal audits on the project. So there's one in 2024-25, and that provided a reasonable assurance that the actual correct mechanisms and mitigations were in place to deliver the project on time and to budget. There were some recommendations to ensure that the project keeps on track, and we've implemented those. And there's also an audit that's being undertaken currently, and we're awaiting the final report in about a week's time. And I know Nick sort of said that we did obviously cover this at Monday's Finance and Performance Policy and Scrutiny, but I will just touch on it very briefly. So this is the total cost projection at REBA Stage 3. The figures have been simplified, so there may be some small rounding errors. But the project spend to date includes some survey costs, fees incurred in the original project, AV and stage equipments. So the Wilmot Dixon, the construction contractors stage 3 cost plan is coming out at just under 8.4 million. There's obviously this project spend that we've had to date, and there's also some items outside of the construction contract. So I mentioned them earlier, sort of, for example, the audio visual equipment that we need to buy. There's some other elements like the roofing repairs and that sort of thing. I think it's back over to Nick.
Yes, thank you, Kel. So as we mentioned in the introduction, emissions was a big part of this project, reducing emissions. But however, as the project's progressed, it's become clear that accommodating suitable air source heat pumps on the building footprint was not practically possible. So I put together a little slide there for you. Lynn, I don't know if you can see it. There was one behind you if you need to look at it. That's just a really high-level summary of the things that we looked at there. So on the options on the side, there's 4 options there. And on the top, we've got, does it fit on the roof? Do we need planning permission? Does it need maintenance upgrade? What's the impact on the emitters within the building? And does it need cleaning the system? Now, the fits on the roof is the one that's absolutely key here. We've got a fixed capacity space on the roof to get these air source heat pumps in, and they are of a size and capacity that it's just not practical to do that. There's also the suggestion that planning wouldn't be supported, even if we can get them on there. And the mains upgrade, it would probably need a new substation put in as well. But to demonstrate this, I just want to go to this slide. It's probably not instantly recognisable to you. That's the schematic of the roofs involved in the Capitol. It's at a slightly odd angle, but number 11 is the glass box. So if you imagine you're looking along the side. Now roof 4, which is the mauve/purple one on the top, that's the site where the air source heat pumps would go. That's the space that we would have to fit them in.
It's the only site with the only
The only
location.
site, yeah. This is probably better. I hope you can see this. So this is the overview of the Capitol. Now roof 4, you can see there, if you looked at the auditorium roof and looked to the side, that front grey bit is the site for the air source heat pumps where they would have gone. you can see how tight it is and small. In some instances on the air source heat pumps, we would require 5 units to drive the efficiency of that building. Some of these units are 3.5 metres by 2.5 metres, so bigger than a Volkswagen Beetle, a combined total weight of over 11 tonnes. So could we get them on there? In most instances, not, just with the units, but the additional plant that we need with them in terms of the buffer vessels, but also the acoustic barring wouldn't fit onto that space. You could also probably notice the permitted development right next door to that. So that block of flats, I think it's called Sussex House, is literally metres away from that roof space. So planning would probably not support through loss of light and noise. So practically getting air source heat pumps on the roof was not an option that we were able to follow, unfortunately. So hopefully that demonstrates the complexities that we had within that. However, we are going to be looking to reduce carbon emissions. We'll be doing a number of things, effective monitoring of the building through a new building management system, lighting, and just making sure that we're using the building more effectively. We're also ready to make sure that the systems are in place that when we get to the point of replacing the auditorium roof, so roof 13, which you can see in the middle there, the curved roof, has approximately sort of 7 to 10 years life left in it. Now, the decision has been made not to replace that within this refurbishment because of that lifespan. But when we do look to do that, if we look to do that, we could make that PV ready. So the systems we will be putting in place will be compatible with that. So again, that would drive it down. The boilers we will be putting in will be gas efficient boilers, and they will be hydrogen blend ready. So a combination of gas ready for hydrogen. We haven't got the figures in for those yet. That will be part of stage 4 when we're looking at the figures in detail about what that means in terms of carbon reduction and cost for fuel effectively. So I'm going to ramp up the pace a little bit here. This is, for me, the sort of interesting bit. This is the stuff we're doing to the internal spaces of the venue. I'm hoping that most of you are regular customers at the Capitol. I'm going to give praise to the Capitol team here. I think they've done a remarkable job over the last few years in what really is a failing building. It's probably gone well beyond its shelf life. The seats were pretty appalling, really, over the last couple of years, and they really have done a remarkable job to make it look even partly respectable for the customers. Within that, the customer base has remained. For things like Panto, ticket sales have actually gone up within it, which I would say is a failing building. So refurbishing is only going to assist the Capitol team to make sure that that venue is successful going forward. So I'm going to rip through these pretty quickly. So the auditorium, it's the heart of the Capitol Theatre. These are mood boards, so these are stage 3 mood boards. This is the indication of what it's going to look like in terms of colour and style. We will be replacing all the seating with theatre style seating. We will be recarpeting, repainting all the walls, redoing all the lighting, making sure that all the stair lights are done as well. So complete refurbishment within the auditorium. Within that, there's some very practical things like asbestos removal to make sure that the building's compliant and safe. So I'm not going to linger on these too long because I'm going to say the same sort of thing for a lot of these. So Cinema 1, so screen 1, which we're going to call the Roxy. Again, you can see the sort of style we're going for there. We're leaning into sort of Art Deco flavour. It's quite plush. It's quite cosy. It's also got a function as a cinema. And one of the prime things for a cinema, obviously, it's got to go dark. Because when you're watching a film, you don't want any distractions. But that's the sort of flavour that we're going for within Cinema 1. Cinema 2, which we call in the Ritz, slightly more contemporary flavour to it. Alex, I think you said you went to the cinema recently. The seats are pretty shoddy at the moment. This is going to be a massive step up in terms of comfort and customer experience. The audio visual and all of them as well is going to be top notch. The Capitol Lounge or the bar area, again, is really ripe for a bit of refurbishment. Again, that gives you a flavour of sort of the Art Deco feel that we're going for. We are making some key changes in there. Some of the infrastructure changes, we're making the floor level because there's a bit of a a hump in there, a step. Doesn't have to be there. We're extending the bar, so we're including another service area, which again is looking at the revenue on that. One of the key aspects for the bar is in the intermission, everybody's wanting to get their drinks. At the moment, we only have 3 serving spaces, so this will add an additional one. This is a schematic of it. I think you're all familiar with the layout. So the layout doesn't change massively, but what you can see there, the bar is extended. We've taken away some slightly awkward sort of glass panels that had lighting along the side of it, and we've introduced some alcoves in there where we can get some of the banquet seating that goes round, which is going to be pretty plush and nice. Again, apologies for ripping through these quite quick. Capital Circle bar, or the upstairs bar, looks over the balcony, same sort of treatment. It's a lovely, bright, open space, maybe slightly underutilised at the moment, so we're going to make sure that's refurbed to lean into the rest of the design. And then we will utilise that as an area where people can come and sit and relax. Box office. Now, the glass foyer or glass box isn't going to be replaced. That's come out of the original scope, but we are going to be addressing some of the key features in there. It's largely cosmetic, but we are addressing the box office in a very practical sense in terms of how the staff use it, also in terms of accessibility. We will also sort of dress up the remainder of the area as well. The door into the glass foyer, if you've been in there recently, it's pretty snappy, the revolving door. It catches small children in it and leaves them in there sometimes. It's also not particularly safe if you do go with your family member and your small child gets outside. There's several panic modes where parents are trying to get out because you're going straight onto the road. So we are addressing that. We're putting in what's, I can't remember what it's called, Carol, is it electronic doors?
Yeah.
Something like that. So when one opens, you step in and the other one will open, a bit Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has what's called a,
Air curtain, isn't it?
thank you very much, air curtain. See, this is a technical one amongst us, which will address sort of keeping the heat in. So the transition areas, this is just across the whole of the venue really. Again, it's leaning into that Art Deco sort of appeal, but it's not theming it as Art Deco. This has to be a contemporary venue that has a broad appeal, but it does need to lean into the heritage of the building itself. So that just gives you a demonstration, an example of some of the sort of features that we'll be using in there. The outside area, we call it the amphitheatre. It's been underutilised and sort of a little bit left over the years. We're going to make the most of that, probably with some architectural planting, just to make it more attractive on the external appearance. It has got lighting in it at the moment, but they don't work, so we're going to be repairing those. And we probably take the opportunity to get some additional signage on that curved wall, so at least it's got street presence. Last but not least on these, toilets, massively important. We did a public survey last year. We asked people to put things in a hierarchy of what they thought was really important within a venue like this. Pleased to say that the quality of performances and the team that you meet there came up very high. But not far behind was toilets. Toilets is crucial for people using a public venue. The ones at the moment really do need some input into them. So this is giving you a flavour of what we're trying to do with the toilets. They look good, they will be hygienic, they will be clean, they will be robust. And again, they do lean into that sort of Art Deco design and quite appealing. This is the schematic, it's a little bit blurry. Capacity is always an issue. There isn't a theatre in the world that at the intermission there isn't a queue for the toilet. You would need hundreds of toilets to make sure that everybody could go when they needed to go. So one of the asks here was to increase the capacity, particularly around the ladies' facilities. We have a finite footprint in terms of where we could put the toilets. So if you're familiar with it at the moment, you can see that on the right-hand side is the gents' toilets. We've changed the way you get into those. And the capacity in there is largely the same. Men don't tend to queue very much. They're pretty quick, shall we say. But ladies, we do need capacity. So the biggest changes we've done here is we've moved the entrance around the corner. We've managed to get one more cubicle into the ladies' toilets, which doesn't sound a lot, but it has shifted it from 7 to 8. But what we have done, if you can see on the left-hand side, if you're looking at it, we've got 3 what are called super loos in there. They will be available for everybody. However, we will play a little trick because we will put a sign up that says ladies' toilets along the corridor. And in reality, the ladies' toilets with the cubicles and the 3 super loos will be for ladies to use. So we've increased the capacity to 11, which is about as much as we can get into that facility. And that really does address some of the concerns and needs that people fed back in that survey. You're counting, Paul? Just checking we got it right. It made me worried then. This leads me on to accessibility. It's something that's really close to my heart. We've taken the opportunity here to really address some of the fundamental accessibility issues within the capital. As you get into the building, it is step-free access throughout the venue. We have got an accessible toilet in there, but we've taken the opportunity here to put what's called a changing places facility. So that's the bit on the left-hand side that you can see. Now, changing places facilities are unique that they offer accessible toilets to adults with profound and multiple disabilities. It has things like a peninsula toilet, it has a hoist, it has an adult-sized changing facility, space for 2 carers and privacy screens. They are recognised as the top-notch thing that you need to make it accessible for everybody. So we're pleased that we've had the ability to put that in there. That's something really to crow about. I had a quick look on the internet today, and I think it's 150-mile radius from here. There's only 4 public venues around theatres and cinemas that have a changing places facility within them. So Horsham and the capital will be right up there in offering that as a facility, I think is amazing. So I'm just going to use that just to spring on to other accessibility bits. If we're putting a changing places facility in there, by dint of that, we're going to encourage people with profound disabilities to come and visit our theatre. So we need to make sure that when they come to the cinema or theatre, they get a good quality service. So that is the current layout of screen 1. Now, there's a couple of things I want to pick up on there. One, the middle of that cinema has a big gap in it, which is your prime seating. So that was a bit of an error when we last did the refurbishment. It hasn't got the wheelchair spaces put in, but if you look on row B, which is the second row from the screen towards the fire exit, there's 2 wheelchair spaces there. So they're sort of out on the limb really by the fire exit, not ideal. The new layout is this. So you can see what we've done. We've removed the row of seating. We've put wheelchair spaces front and centre. Those are the prime positions. Not only does it give our disabled customers prime position to watch a film, it also enhances the accessibility in terms of getting in, but also access in terms of safety to that fire exit. So we've really remodelled that to make sure that accessibility is better. The sharp-eyed among you will notice that's the original one. That's a new layout. We are reducing the capacity in terms of the seating within the cinemas. That's not by fault, that's by design. We currently sell about 10% of cinema tickets across the year. So actually we don't need all the seats. The challenge is here is increasing the ticket sales to 15 to 20% and making sure that the customer experience with the seats we're putting in is top notch. So we think by doing this, we're going to get more people in. So this brings us on to the auditorium. That's the current layout. It's not bad, but our wheelchair customers are pretty much put on the edge there. They're sitting in a fairly old-fashioned semi-compliant cage, I would call it, with the bars at the front. It's not bad, it's pretty good. This is what we're proposing. It's not a brilliant image because we're still working on this. So effectively what we've done here, we've removed row D, which is 13 seats. The red bits are the fire exits and the blue shading there is the accessible circulation routes, which is all compliant. What we're planning to do is row E will be a fully flexible row of seats. So if nobody in a wheelchair books a space, it could be standard seating. But if somebody in a wheelchair books or several people books, we can take them out and accommodate them in the centre of the auditorium. Looks a slightly old-fashioned picture, this one. But again, it's not ideal because it's not fully finished yet. Those 8 spaces, there will be seating across there. So it gives us full flexibility in terms of if somebody books with a wheelchair, they can choose where they seat within that framework. The key thing for me is when you come, you can sit with your family and your friends, you can choose where you sit and you can be with the people you come with. We could take out as many seats as we like in that row. So if you're coming with your friends who are also a wheelchair user, we can accommodate you. In reality, we can accommodate up to 8 wheelchairs. Traditional ticket sales say that we probably only have about 2 people in a wheelchair at a time, but we've now got the offer to offer that across the facility, which I think is remarkable. So in terms of a package around accessibility, I think the Capital is going to be punching way, way above its weight in terms of what we're offering. Let me just find my place. So just in conclusion, the improvement proposed ensure that the Capital Theatre remains up to date and a cultural asset to the district and able to provide access to high quality theatre and cinema. Enhances the overall customer experience and offer. It will also enable us to achieve some carbon reduction through efficiency and create sound business case which looks at addressing and reducing the subsidy that the venue currently attracts. I fully realise and acknowledge that we have just completed ROBA Stage 3, and so there are still a lot of unknowns within the project, and this is mostly down to our project schedule and REBA framework not aligning with our organisational reporting structure. However, the Cabinet report that we submitted is predicting a total spend of 9.7 million, so within the 10.2 million budget originally agreed. Thank you very much, Chair. Open to questions.
Nick, Carol, thank you very much for that comprehensive update. Thank you. And that was following your update you've already had to do earlier this week, so thanks very much. I just want to raise a couple of points first, and then we can perhaps open it up to questions. First of all, I'm really delighted to see that the facilities for wheelchair users will be significantly improved, allowing disabled people to sit with their companions, and that there'll be an official changing places facility. In 3.2 of the report, it says that the theatre auditorium, the seats will be no less spacious or comfortable than the current ones. I don't know if that's a bit of jargon. Are they roughly the same as we're seeing at the moment?
Oh, my mic's still on. At the moment in the auditorium, we have cinema seats. They're not theatre seats. So we are putting proper theatre seats in. The seat backs at the moment are 500 across. The theatre seats we'll be putting in will be 500 across. The construction of them are just different. So you will have no less space than you currently sit on, but the stuff around them is less. Does that make sense?
I think so, thank you. I might have another question on that in a second. I also noticed that both cinemas will have all the seats replaced. You know, you'll be competing with the Everyman. I don't know how that compares. They've got that sort of large sofa style. I think we did see some pictures, but just wondered how that compared. And I suppose the question, if the running is at about 9-10% for the cinema, are two cinemas actually required? I mean, I've been there had a private family viewing before, and nobody else has been there, which is great, but it's not very financially viable. So I just wanted to raise that. Just the final thing on the seats that I'd like to raise. I fully appreciate that kids like to sit there, and so they pick away at the seats like this and make little holes. I was wondering if there was any other consideration that was thought of, rather than replacing all the seats. Was it possible to think about covering of the seats? And if we are replacing them, are the seats in the future more child-proof to the sort of the picking away little fingers? Thank you.
Yeah, you might have to remind me of some of those questions. So seats, I mean, in terms of, was the first one around reduction? Sorry, we're changing the seats. I can't remember what the first question was. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it was the comparison with the Everyman seat.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And two cinemas. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're not going to be in direct comparison with the Everyman. They have a very unique sort of offer where they have the sofas and food and things like that. What we will be doing is enhancing our seating offer. I can't remember the name of the make now. It's a tip seat, whatever it is. Furco tip seat it's called, which is a nice plush cinema seat. You know, you're going to have cup holders, which is a really big thing. So it's going to be much more comfortable, a bit more sort of reclined. It's going to be more of a cinema seat that you're used to or expect. The reduction and the use of 2 cinemas is a very good question. We sort of mulled this over at the beginning of the project. 2 cinemas is immensely more usable than 1 because you can show 2 different films. The numbers of we can show the same film in 2 cinemas if you want as well, and we also have the capacity to move it into the theatre. So if there's a blockbuster film, we can utilise all of those seats. However, at the moment, 10% ticket sales across the year in cinemas is slightly below the UK average. I think part of that is to do with there are other offers, but pre-COVID, we were selling about 15%, and that has sort of aligned with Everyman coming in. What I will say is the offer that we're putting in here is going to nudge us up, if not go past the offer around things like the big multiplexes in terms of audio visual. So the new projectors that we've got in are really top notch. They're going to offer you an experience probably above most cinemas. So with the audio, the seating is going to also play into that. So the reduction in seating isn't a concern for me in terms of the ability to build a good sound business case. So we currently have 295 seats, I think that's right, and we're bringing it down to about 200 within the cinemas. If we can sell 20-25% of those tickets, that's works out sound business to do that, because people come for the experience. They come for good seat, good sound, good audio visual, good bar offer, good snacks as well, and we'll be able to offer that. So there's not a concern around that. Childproofing.
Childproofing, picking fingers.
What I can say with cinema seats and theatre seats, they are pretty robust, but children are pretty tenacious. So I think you would look at recovering seats maybe every 10 years, I think. If you looked at the auditorium before this refurbishment, they were beyond end of life. I mean, there's no question about it, that some of the material was off, some of the foam was out. They get hammered. There's no question about it. I don't know how much you could protect against fingers and people digging into them. I think the ones we're choosing are going to offer us the best resistance to that.
And the armrests can be changed out as well, can't they? So there is a particular type of seat which gives it a little bit more durability. And
thank you for that. That's very true. So the armrest, where it gets lots of movement, we're choosing ones where you can pop those out and just replace the armrest. So there's been a practical.
So it's not been able to refurbish what we've got at the moment, but in the future there is the option for the armrests and covering potentially.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The seat isn't just about the coverings; it's about the construction. You know, if you looked at an auditorium seat, they can be metal framed, but there are moving parts on that. So inevitably they move and shift around. These are 20 odd years old, so they need to be replaced. You can probably go through half-life where you recover. And actually we did take the option this year just for the really worst ones to get us through this programme, just to recover a few just at a very low level. So maybe in a few, 10 years you could recover, but it's sort of a make way sort of thing. Yeah, same with the cinema seats.
Thank you. Just finally, you said is it going to be a good offering? Is it going to be able to offer sort of 3D IMAXy feel, or I assume not 4D, but
not 4D. I'd have to check with Matt, the venue manager, about that, but I don't know is the honest answer. But I can check for you.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up now to questions from any councillors. Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
To say thank you for all the work you're doing on this. I'm really, really excited by what's planned and what's coming forward. So thank you so much. I can see that the toilets have been a huge challenge, but they are so important. Just out of curiosity, in trying to get capacity increased, has the size of those cubicles been affected? Are the DIMs still, passing what they need to?
No, the capacity has stayed the same. It's just by redesigning that we've managed to get one more cubicle within that the space that was allocated for the ladies. The super losers, they call them, will be industry standard, so they would be the same size. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Livingston.
Yeah, I know we discussed this on Monday as well, but what the project risks, the biggest risk I think is when we close in January and then get into reopening in November next year in time for the pantomime. Now I work on a project which is running a decade behind at the moment, which is HS2. So I just want to know, what's your confidence, your degree of confidence?
Yeah, as confident as we can be. One of the mitigations we can put in place here, and we've got to discuss this further, is we're obviously refurbishing the venue holistically. We will prioritise the auditorium because, as you rightly suggest, that Panto and the revenue that it drives is key for us. So it's sensible, we think, that the auditorium takes priority within this refurbishment. And if the worst comes to the worst and we don't open a cinema in November, okay, we don't open a cinema, but we will be looking at doing that.
And just to add as well that there is the practical completion is scheduled for October, but then the actual handover is November. So we would hope for it to be in October.
Did you want to go back on that, Councillor Livingston? Thank you. Councillor Beard.
Following the conversation about popping out of the arms, the same as the carpeting, carpet tiles, so you can replace. Thank you.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. To follow on from the question about toilets, I just wanted to say it's really good to see that so much thought has been put into accessibility. However, I have a kind of further, because accessibility is not just around mobility. I think it would be a very forward step to make a gender neutral area for your toilets. And I also think that it would be really important to consider the naming. So we were talking about ladies, and then I saw an M for men, males, I don't know, but making sure that they are equivalent. And if you're doing ladies, then gentlemen, male or female, and gender neutral, I think, would be really important to be inclusive as well. So I hope that that's been thought through. Thank you.
So the male toilets will be men, won't they? Male. The female toilets will be female, so M and F. The gender neutral toilets, so the 3 superloos are for anybody to use. And then we've got the 2 toilets upstairs, which are also for anybody to use. So we've got the male toilets, which have got 3 urinals, 2 cubicles. We've got the female toilets, which have got 8 cubicles. And then we've got 5 toilets that anybody can use. Obviously, in the downstairs area, because of the demand on the female toilets, they are primarily, we're primarily aiming them at women, but anybody can go in them.
Thank you.
Just on that, how will those 5 additional loos be labelled? So we've got the super loos and we have the 2 additional upstairs. How will they be labelled?
They will have MF on the door, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo some of the points that have already been made about the works undergoing here. I think it's fantastic, and will really ensure that there's longevity in the venue. In terms of the cinema venues themselves, so we're just discussing that we're running about 10% capacity. Do we know what the average capacity is of cinemas of a comparable venue, or comparable venues across the board, maybe locally in other authorities, for example, for starters, compared to what we're on at the moment?
I'm going to tentatively say yes, but this is in conversation with Matt, who's the venue manager. Now, he's put it, this is nationally, so I don't know locally, that cinemas probably only run between 12 and 15%. So it's pretty low. Remember, this is across the year in terms of ticket sales. So cinemas generally run very, very low in terms of capacity. If you have a blockbuster, we will sell out, no question about it. But you could be showing a film tonight that has 5 people in there. So when you're looking at the average across the year, it does bring it down. But like I say, 2019, we were up to sort of the 15%. So there is an example here where we've proven that we can do it. So since COVID, and maybe Everyman's had an impact, but also the facility that we've got at the capital hasn't helped with us maintaining that. I think with this refurbishment, we've got the best opportunity to increase that as well.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, thanks for that, Nick. Yeah, I agree. I think that, as they give the best chance. I think to say, with the current state of some of the seating, I think it's fair to say there may have been some people that have not come back because of the current state of the seating. I welcome the revamp in the layout as well. I think, as you say, you rightly pointed out, you're going to have prime seating, prime positioning, which is great, and even other little things like, I don't know, even if these new seats are going to have things like cup holders, even little things like that, for example. So when I went to the cinema there at the start of August and ended up, spilling my drink on my lap because I was balancing it with the popcorn and someone else, and even little things like that can turn people off a venue, because, as we know, people are very picky these days about those kind of things.
And you're right. Sorry to butt in, but cup holders was remarkably present within the public survey. Unbeknownst to me, they are really, really a thing.
They're vital.
They are vital. So yes, we will be having cup holders. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And you just on the auditorium part as well, I just wanted to raise that bit quickly. It was this is just more of a point of curiosity as well, actually, because I don't ever recall it being used. So are we just adding planting there now, and kind of
The amphitheatre at the front.
The amphitheatre,
It was used originally. I think the original concept for that within 2003 I think the aspiration is lovely that it would become a small performance space. Obviously, the practicality of that, it's right next to the road, it's pretty sparse, and it's probably quite sterile. So the reason it's underutilised is that it's just not very well thought out. So at the moment, some buggies get parked there. That's about it. So what's going to happen is that amphitheatre, which is sort of like a bowl that's there, will be filled in, and then so it'll be levelled, and then there's just going to be some synthetic architectural planting, which just makes it more appealing, really. Yeah.
Thank you. And just one final point on the cinemas, and then I'll give way, is once the refurbishment has been undertaken, as we're talking about percentages and capacity of the venue, this might be slightly straying into the financial side, so I'll keep it very brief. But maybe, has there been considered, for example, for an introductory offer for the cinemas and the theatre, for example, once it is open? Because once you get people in the doors, it's getting people in the doors, seeing the changes, and that's going to really help with retention. So sometimes it's just convincing those people that may have decided not to return that things have changed, and see what the difference is. Once they see it's night and day, hopefully that will help with customer retention in the future and bring that figure back up.
Yeah. Me and Matt the venue manager, will be working on a pretty sound business case about how we do that. Retention is everything. You're right. Protecting the brand is everything. Lauren and Tracy, who are the marketing and publicity officers at the Capitol, they have a newsletter that goes out, and it currently has a membership of 60,000 people, which is remarkable for a venue of that size. 60,000, yeah, which is via email, which is absolutely amazing. So if you think about the reach of that as well, we do have a massive customer base. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that those people go every week. I don't think, they may have been once a few years ago, but it does give us that basis for reaching out. As part of the closure, and we haven't mentioned this really because of timing, there's going to be a fairly elaborate and complex bit of comms around this to see us through the refurbishment, to keep people engaged. We're seeing this as an opportunity to show people what refurbishment of a theatre looks like, because there is real interest in that. So it's keeping people hooked in. We've still got to sell tickets. If you think about a theatre and how it operates, we've already got things booked for 27. So next year, when the theatre is closed, the team are going to be working hard, booking and programming for 27. So their downtime has sort of been a bit now. So they were going to be very busy during the refurbishment, making sure that when it does reopen, we've got maximum number of people in there. There's already a Capital refurbishment page on their website, so I'd encourage you all to sign up for that, and it will just give you regular updates about what we're doing and where we're going with it as well.
I know there's a couple of people waiting, but I'm going to go to Councillor Trollope first, because I know he's got to leave early.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do remember on our tour of the Capitol, which I think must be coming up for a year now, but that the biggest income stream was not actually ticket sales, but drink sales. And far from wanting a nation, a town of alcoholics, what are we going to do to streamline and improve the rate at which you can sell drinks? I mean, particularly, as it's always during a rush. I know in some cinemas I've seen that you can actually pre-order and things like that. There's all sorts of things you can do. But it would seem to me to be sensible to be, well, could we have some more information on what your plans are in that area? And
Yep,
my apologies for not putting my phone on silent. I shall do now.
Yeah, the bar is a key bit of the business model that we'll be putting together. It does fairly well. Simon, who's the bar manager there, is very experienced about what we do, and we've already started talking about how we. At the moment, it's a really good offer in terms of the bar, but what tends to happen is people arrive ready for their show. So they may come a quarter of an hour early. They may get a drink, or they may not. They may just come and see a show. The offer here is if we make this more attractive, and again, we need to look at a range of opportunities to get people there. If they get there an hour early, again, I'm not suggesting for one moment we turn every resident within the Horsham district into a drinker. There's soft drinks available too. If they're there for an hour, they're going to buy 2 drinks. So what's the additionality of doing that? But it needs to be a venue that people feel that they want to go to. There's got to be a comfort there. You know, at the moment, I don't think the Capital offers that, despite the team working really hard. You know, there's other options to go to within the town. But if the Capital is offering a really top offer around its bar offer, but also all the stuff around it, that puts us in the best position. But then we've also got to look at, are there marketing opportunities? Do we do some special deals within that as well to entice people in? You know, the comedy nights, for example, sell out. Because the comedy nights in general are a younger audience. I'm not going to suggest this, but I think they probably drink a bit more. So actually, how do we get them in there for longer?
Okay.
If that's what we want to do.
I don't disagree with any of that. It's just, I think from a personal point of view, I get frustrated if I'm queuing too long during the interval. And I think it would be, just makes sense to see how it can be streamlined. Particularly, I remember as you were going to reorganize it. I don't remember the details, but you're going to reorganize the layout so that you could have a larger serving space and
so the bar will be
flow it.
the bar will be extended, so there's one more serving space. So that will mean that the queues are less, but also for the intermission where you would get drinks, we do that now. We extend that. One of the things you may not have seen in the schematic of the bar area was there's 3 pillars within the central space there. We've actually incorporated some small shelving that goes around those as well. So generally, if you go to a theatre, the intermission drinks are preloaded and they're put out in a space where we will be looking at things like exactly that. So if you're coming out in an intermission, your drinks will be ready for you if you want them.
Okay, thank you very much for that update.
Nick, we'll also be looking at sort of, even if people aren't going to the venue for a show or the cinema, would you look at it as like a cafe space, spill over from the park sort of during the day?
Yeah, I mean, part of the original aim, and I don't mean to hark back to the original aim, was obviously the glass box was going to be refurbed, and within that we were going to have an enhanced food and beverage offer with a small kitchen space. That obviously isn't achievable now, but what we will have is, can we get people there during the day? Our programming at the moment in the venue opening times is still slim. We open later because we're looking at revenue, but we're also looking at operational costs. So generally the venue doesn't open till 12 o'clock. And I think that's sound. I think Matt, the venue manager, has got it absolutely nailed on this, because it means that the revenue, income and expenditure is about right. We put on slightly less shows, but they're more well attended. So I think that's right. But again, as part of the business case, we need to look at that operational model. If we opened earlier, if we opened at 9 o'clock, can we entice people in with coffees and things like that? Are there early morning screenings that we could do? We've got to balance off the operational costs with the potential revenue, but we will be exploring all of that.
I used to attend in London sort of mother and baby sessions. You know, you literally come with a breastfeeding mother, and lots of coffees are sold in those sessions.
And we do offer that already, actually. It's about, can we expand that? So we do box office babies and mothers. We do dementia-friendly screenings. We do like SEND screenings, autistic-friendly screenings. So we've got quite a broad range. Can we extend that in terms of more often? Yeah.
Thank you. I have Councillor Clark, then Councillor Bateman. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions and 1 comment. First question is, you may have mentioned it, but it wasn't clear to me. How do wheelchair users get from the front door to that space in the main theatre? Is it sort of no steps, rampy type stuff?
Step free. So once you're in so you come up the ramp at the side, you're coming into the main foyer, and then it's step-free all the way through to that space in the auditorium.
Somebody who's got crutches or something could use the same route if they can't make stairs, presumably.
Absolutely, yep.
Second question. One of the objectives was to improve the revenue, to put it crudely, more bums on seats. Two questions on the seats, though it's been explored at quite some depth. I'm a bit surprised that we're keeping the size of the seats the same. I understand from a volumetric point of view, but how can I put this delicately? People are getting larger than what they were, and therefore will they fit into the seats in the next 5 or 10 years compared to what it was 5 or 10 years ago, if you get the drift? That's the first part.
It's a very good question. We have ruminated on that, and we did have the option of putting larger seats in if we wished to. I think it's right we chose not to. I think we've gone with a standard seat, so we did think about that, but it's an option that we've decided not to go with.
Fully conscious it's something that airlines struggle with, and having seen airline travel, I think I'll leave my comments at that point. The other point I was going to say is, you mentioned cutting down the number of seats in the cinemas, I think, though possibly the wheelchair spaces would compensate for that or not, I'm not sure. So are you saying that overall we're going to end up with less seats than what we had, basically, and how are we going to make up the fall in revenue?
Yeah, so the cinemas are definitely having less seats in there. Yeah, so we've got 2 screens at the moment. I can never remember the figures exactly. I think one's 180 and one's 100. We're probably losing, if we've got 275 seats overall, I think we're reducing by 60,
Back row.
something like that. So it's reconfiguring bigger seats as well. And that's based on really the ticket sales that we currently do. So we're prioritising comfort and size and space and experience, because the industry proves that you very rarely sell out a film. So if you're getting people in, I'd rather get 15% of 100 than 10% of a few more, because I think that makes sense. It entices people in, and it's the offer that are going to get more people in there. So having 200 seats rather than 170 doesn't actually make a big difference to the revenue. I think we've got more chance of driving people in with a better offer.
I think if there's a really popular film, they use the auditorium anyway, don't
Yeah,
they?
we shift it to the auditorium. Yeah. So if there's a blockbuster film, we can utilise both screens and move it to the auditorium. So, you know, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Bond, we would do that anyway.
No, I'm quite reassured by what you've said, that, you know, things seem to be well thought through and under control. So from that point of view, quite happy. If you put up the chart on the bottom on the toilets, there was a question in my mind. It's one of the toilets. I couldn't work out how to get into it. It was one of these so-called gender neutral ones. Yeah, the bottom left hand as you're looking at it. How the hell do you get into it? It's a detail, but it's fascinating.
Chairman, it's
because the doors open on the changing place. That's why. So there is a door into it. It's just the changing place. Is that what you want?
yeah. So the changing places door has to open outwards.
Yeah.
So that's showing the changing places door open. Now,
Right.
while that door's open, yes, you can't get into that toilet.
Okay,
It's
I think. Okay.
So this one, just to clarify, this one here. So this is the changing place as well, which has to open this way. If someone's coming in a wheelchair.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That one in.
This one opens inwards. So that is open. Yes.
And what's that one in the corner?
This one here. Oh,
No,
that's part
that,
of
oh, that's part of the same thing.
the- yes.
Okay.
You just got
Okay.
to squeeze round that.
So 12 square metres around the 2 galleries.
I misread the diagram, I'll put it that way. A comment more than anything else. I used to be, well, I'm not the only one, that the capital used to have a mailing list, and you used to get regular mail shots regularly of what was going on. I haven't seen that for years.
No, I haven't.
So it might be an idea to talk to the publicity team and basically tap into the mailing lists and stuff. I'm probably teaching grandma to suck eggs here, that use those mailing lists to at least tell people about the revamp and the changes and stuff, and use some of the captive email addresses and stuff that you have to, you know, whet the appetite, so to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, I will do that.
Nick, I was just thinking perhaps we have to sign up for your running courses so we can still squeeze into the seat. But Councillor Bateman.
Yes, there's obviously the two zones, there's Roxy and the Ritz, and they have different designs. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on why the rationale for the different decor schemes, and, you know, could you actually save money by just having one design, just to understand it really?
Yeah, good question. The capital's got quite a long history, obviously. I think it was 1930s,
1936.
Thank you, 1936. So the Roxy and the Ritz is harking back to that. I think it was opened as the Ritz. We need Matt here now. Anyway, he knows all this stuff. So the Ritz was part of the original cinema. So we're harking back to that, and the Roxy comes in. Can't remember why. Sorry, the details. But where we've gone for two different designs, do they cost more for doing that? No, I don't think so. What we wanted to do was to give sort of an individual character to each of those screens rather than being cookie cutter sort of multiplex. If you go to multiplex, you could be in any of them, which is fine, works for that. But the Capitol Theatre has a sort of identity and character. So because we wanted to be up to date and modern, one of them is slightly more contemporary. The other one is leaning more into the Art Deco sort of original bit. It's not, you're not going to go in and go Art Deco theme park. It's just some of those smaller details. It's just got a character of its own. And I think that's quite important because the Capitol, like I say, has an identity. It's not a standard theatre. It's actually pretty special, really. We should be really pleased we've got it. So I think it's quite nice. It's got that identity. It's not going to cost any more, I think. But if you go to screen one, which will be the
Upstairs.
Roxy, you're going to go to the, it's building that sort of familiarity. We're going to go to the Roxy, we're going to go to the Ritz. They've got a slightly different feel about it. So I think it's quite appropriate, it's quite nice to do that. And we've taken the option, really. I think that's the answer. We've taken the option to do it.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, another name for it was the Carfax Electric Theatre in the mid-1950s, in which Michael Caine started off his career as an electrician and other things. Not many people may know this.
Here, different building from the back, but we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Clarify what's wrong on the toilet signs.
Yes, I'll just hand over to
Sorry, I was incorrect on the toilet signage. So the male toilets will have the traditional man sign. The female toilets will have the traditional female sign. A lady in a skirt, a man standing. The gender neutral toilets will have a man and a lady.
That's rather than the M&F, it's just
Yes.
a diagram.
We spent so much time talking about toilet signage.
Okay, I think it's important, but thank you for clarifying that. Does any other committee member have any other questions or comments? Any other councillor? Okay. Thank you very much. I think that concludes that item. So if you wanted to leave, I appreciate that you've spent a lot of time. Thank you. We're on to agenda item number 9 next. This is the Bishopric and Carfax consultation. It's on pages 19 to 124 of your pack, which includes appendices A to J. The director leaves on leave today, so we are going to have a report from the corporate manager, Clive Burley, and we also have Councillor Fletcher, cabinet member for planning and infrastructure, who could maybe be able to support with some Q&As. The report is to update the committee on the outcomes of the public consultation in response to the REBA Stage 3 to regenerate the Bishopric, Worthing Road and Carfax area of the town centre. The survey had 841 respondents, but 98% of those were Horsham residents. There's going to be lots of questions on this. I'll probably just pass straight on to Clive now to give us the update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The origin of the proposals for the Bishopric go back as long ago as 2014, when the council approved the Waitrose John Lewis development. As part of the approved plans, it showed the removal of the stream and the necessity to open up the area to connect both the western side of town with the town centre. Subsequent to that, the council adopted the town centre vision, which basically was to look at its strengths and weaknesses. It was to do a reality check on the health of the town centre and proposed a whole series of interventions, one of which was to recommend the adoption of a public realm strategy to guide development across the town centre as and when that was to arise. And that was adopted in 2021. Importantly, it did focus on designing spaces for people, naturally, but to simplify the streetscape and improve legibility, but design spaces to be more flexible and suitable for multiple uses, anticipating future growth within the district and within the town centre. And obviously, to do all that we possibly could in terms of the public realm to support a vibrant town centre economy and to counteract the decline in the high street. I think for all our activities as the council, I think we've successfully managed to do that. Horsham has one of the lowest vacancy rates, and that's been historically below 10%, below 8%, and is indicative of the strength of the local economy and its particular offer. So following from that, the previous administration made capital provision to bring forward a regeneration scheme for the bishopric, but also to design an appropriate scheme for the car parks, subject to future funding. As Carol mentioned, we follow the Royal Institute of British Architects plan of work. So we're now at stage 3, similar to the capital project. The stages 1 and 2 have defined the direction of travel and what we're seeking to achieve in strategic terms. The report outlines those as combining active travel, a high quality public realm, and improving green infrastructure and climate resilience. I won't go into the individual detail that's in the report. So following the receipt of the REBA 3 report and the latest iteration of those proposals, we commenced consultation engagement in April, and the report at section 3 outlines the extent of that consultation with businesses. The appendices show, particularly Appendix B, that's a series of banner posters, both textually and visually, displaying what we were actually proposing, so people could more readily understand the proposals. Putting 2D maps on a website isn't the best way to advertise what we're actually trying to achieve. Aside from the banners, we had a leaflet distributed to all addresses within the affected areas, so that was over 600, because I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of what we were proposing and had an opportunity to be able to respond to that. There are obviously banners, town centre posters, we engaged social media. I gave a BBC Radio Sussex interview amongst other activities. We ran 2 drop-in sessions at the Swan Walk Centre. We had over 300 visitors, and I spoke to many of those personally. So we wanted to direct people to a consultation survey on our website, and that allowed people to view all the material, detailed plans, as well as the master plans, all the imagery and the banner text, to give people a comprehensive understanding of what was being proposed, thereby improving the quality of the responses we would actually get, because people will be able to actually understand what we're proposing and be able to comment appropriately. We had about 841 responses to that consultation, which is a very, very, very good response. Chichester, in a recent survey, had about 700 and less than that. So I was fairly pleased about that response. There was a whole series of questions, and the structure of the survey was tiered. So we looked about the design principles and asked people what they thought about those. Then we broke down into each area. So we covered the Bishopric, the Plaza area in particular, the Bishopric West, Worthing Road, Springfield Road. And similarly with the Carfax, we broke it down and described what we were doing in each those areas, and asked people, well, what did they agree or disagree, or how strongly they might agree or how strongly they might disagree with these proposals. And we gave plenty of opportunity by the provision of free text boxes so people could say what they wished, and boy did they do that. The appendices includes all the commentary that we received in response to that consultation. The consultation outcomes are all explained within the report, and there's quite a lot, so I won't get into some of the detail, but I'm happy to pick it up through questioning. But in terms of the specific bishopric design principles, which seem to have caused additional concern with the submission of an e-petition, we asked very specific questions. So in terms of the design principles, 28% agreed, 23% strongly agreed. To open up the entrance from Albion Way into the Bishopric West area, 64% agreed. We asked a specific question about retaining trees and providing new planting. That was supported 92%. Additional cycling parking, 55% agreed with that. Providing more tables and chairs and opening up the central section of the area, that was supported by 83%. Again, more trees, 87%. New street furniture, 84%. So there was a lot of support for the proposals. On the basis of those responses, also the Neighbourhood Council, Denham Neighbourhood Council, the Horsham Society supported the proposals for the bishopric as presented. I then produced a report for consideration by the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure and made a whole series of recommendations. Those were considered, and we agreed a series of recommendations in response to the consultation, and those were publicised on the council website. There's a particular appendix which summarises the changes that we were seeking to make to the proposals as a result of the extensive consultation. And subsequent to the publishing of our response to the consultation, there was a receipt of an e-petition which simply wanted to retain the standard birch trees, the rocks and the stream. And in anticipation that we would receive or hit the 1,000 signature mark, I've prepared a background and further recommendations which will be considered by full council on the 24th, which are included at section 7 in the report before you this evening. Subsequent to that, and in advance of tonight's meeting, I received a number of questions from Councillor Jeffrey, and I said I'd agreed with the Chair that I would cover those as part of my submission. So one of the questions that was asked by Councillor Jeffrey was, could officers confirm whether the mature trees that line the stream would be retained? There was never any intention to remove them. In fact, the publicity materials and the questions specifically were to retain them. The visual imagery that I commissioned clearly shows their retention as part of the wider schemes. the stand of the birch trees located in the old splash pond of the Rising Universe sculpture, they were a temporary installation pending more comprehensive regeneration of the whole area. The second question I was asked was, could I advise on what feedback was received from businesses in this area of the bishopric in response to the plans? I held a meeting with a representative from your Horsham, which is the business improvement district. They sent out an invite to all registered businesses within the all registered businesses in the business improvement district, and I held two meetings, one specifically for the bishopric, one for the Carfax in April. About 12 business representatives have attended. I briefed them all in detail about the proposed plans, and that was followed by a Q&A session. The issue of whether the area should be opened up and removing the stream was discussed in detail. I preferred to retain it. However, all the other business attendees supported the need to open up the area to provide better access to the north side and the area generally, and to provide more space to facilitate al fresco dining, support more turnover, and provide a much more flexible business-orientated space. I've also been asked, in respect to the cost of the project, how does the scope and cost of proposals compared with similar regeneration projects undertaken elsewhere? I replied that the current estimated cost of the Bishop proposals as at REBA 3, which had included the Worthing Road segregated cycle lane, is approximately 3.9 million, of which the works or the building costs are 2.6 million. The remainder being preliminaries, overhead, profit fees, risks, and an inflation allowance. However, as Carol explained, when you go through the REBA process, we have cost plans done at stage 3, and they'll be repeated at stage 4. So we get a reliable estimate, and that gives the opportunity to value engineer down, or should we wish to apply for additional funding, that could be a consideration. But the real test is when you use the contractor supply chain and you start to get real costs in. And obviously that will be a compliant procurement process with at least 3 quotes based on an open book process. Then we'll know the true costs at that point. Yeah, I've also been asked whether the removal of the stream and water feature for the Bishop area, acknowledging that it was a major talking point for members of the public, would result in a generic look and take away from the unique character that Horsham is. And acknowledging that, is there scope to include additional unique features as part of a trade-off for the loss of the stream? I've advised that while the current proposal would result in the loss of the stream and waterfall, a replacement waterfall feature could be included as a replacement subject to cost at the western end of that arm of the bishopric. I've also, as a result of the design changes, I commissioned revised CGI images which show how the area could be opened up. I also added that aesthetic taste, whether you see something as generic, is somewhat subjective. I would not accept that the proposals are generic. All the proposals have been sensitively developed in response to the various constraints and opportunities the public space has to offer, and has had a lot of input from members, my cabinet member, and a wide variety of interested individuals, businesses, and such like. Since the receipt of the e-petition, I've also received further confirmation and support from businesses. Your Horsham have commented that currently the stream acts as a barrier. Few people walk on the north side. It's bad for businesses. There is a minimum 3-metre gap only. So it really, really constricts how the space is currently used and how the space needs to be used in the future. Say the upgrade is urgent. It needs to be more appealing to retailers. We need to remove the stream. We need new seating. and we need a clear walkway on either side to make the space more flexible and usable. A company which owns a number of freeholds and has a significant stake in the town centre supports the removal, the possibility of opening up the area, provision of additional tables and chairs to increase dwell time, to act as a destination point, not just as a route through from one point to the other. So we can try and capture additional spend within the area to support businesses and improve and regenerate the west end of the town centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clive, and thank you for also dealing with the petition and also Councillor Jeffrey's comments that were raised. I mean, for myself, looking at it, there were many observations on the cycle routes and lanes. Perhaps we can talk about that further. In the Carfax area, the cobbles always comes up as a question, and I think the general consensus, it's fair to say, was that it'd be better to have more cycle lanes into town than park and then walk, retaining pedestrian priority within the Carfax. But what I also saw is that regeneration was really welcomed. In the Bishopric, as you've already mentioned, the birch tree stand was introduced as a temporary feature in 2016 to replace the Shelley fountain. And the regeneration in the 90s was to actually, for the rockery and the water feature, was to provide a tranquil space and to try to put a sort of a division in from the ring road, the Albion Way, to sort of create some sort of bit more tranquility there, but completely see how the way that pedestrians walk in that area does cut off one side completely. Don't want to forget what there's 1,000 people who've actually responded to the Save the Stream e-petition, and obviously if there's something that can be done to maintain a feature, perhaps keep some tranquility away from the road, I think that would be appreciated if something didn't actually cut off pedestrians from one side to the other. I understand that we'll be discussing that at full council on the 24th as well. First of all, I'd like to ask Councillor Jeffrey, have your questions been answered, or would you like to respond?
I think they've been answered pretty in full. Thank you for that, Clive. I do appreciate that. Part of it was echoing some of the sentiment of those in the petition, and just so it's on record, what has been looked at and it's been discussed, and it has been thoroughly looked at, and that the council are actually listening to the businesses and people that this regeneration is for, and is designed to, as you say, really increase business to the area and make it a destination point. So it was really more of a point of just ensuring that was on record for those that have concerns, that we are listening, and that we have taken those into account. So thank you for your time for answering those questions. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Councillor Bateman.
I'm just wondering whether or not, it's just, this might sort of widen the gap between a very strong, vibrant Horsham district centre and struggling villages, centres as well. Will it add to the problem that the villages and the smaller towns are feeling?
I don't think providing or upgrading the Bishopric area is going to negatively impact on village town centres. If anything, the major effects on villages and town centres and our town centre here is going to be the impact of additional growth over the next 10 to 20 years. I think everyone's familiar with the issues in the local plan and the nature of housing and development that's going to take place, and the impacts that's both going to have on the road networks. The bottom result is there's going to be more people, there's going to be more spend. So there's an opportunity to make sure we plan appropriately for that growth, so it can be contained, and we can flex our public spaces so we can make the use of that opportunity, and we can support the town centre and its success over the next 20 years.
Councillor Livingston.
Yeah, my question again is about the programme. I see that you're doing the technical design REBA stage 4 from October this year, and you're hoping to complete by January next year, and go into construction in February 2026, which is next year. Have all the contractors and whatever, are they on board at this time, or are you still going out on a procurement for that?
The multidisciplinary team and the main contractor have been engaged through the SCAPE framework. It's a public procured framework. It's a very quick route to market and it's been used previously. So we've ended up commissioning Pick Everard as the main multidisciplinary services, and it's Balfour BT Living Places will be the appointed main contractor. I'm just concluding the pre-construction services agreement to get them on board. So we will work in parallel with both those two organisations in developing the REBA 4 designs, costing them, and then procuring and testing the market and their supply chain. At that point, if we're in budget, all well and good. If we're not in budget, then there are a number of options. We can value engineer down, or we can seek additional funding. But this particular project is slightly more complicated because we're not the highway authority, and it's still to be decided whether it will be this council or whether it would be the county council that will actually deliver and build the scheme at that point. I need to continue discussions with the county council to establish whether that would be the case. There is the additional potential increase in scope because the county council is seeking to use its bus service improvement programme funding to look at improvements around the bus station area. So that might affect the scope of this particular scheme, and it might delay the project somewhat, so we can align all those activities. So when you quote February 2026, that is probably a best estimate. I think there might be some further slippage to accommodate these particular changes.
Okay, thank you. You will obviously have some sort of construction strategy with the businesses, so they know when the work is going to take place and what impacts it's going to have on those businesses.
When we know what the cost is, we procured it, and as part of the mobilisation, we will develop a fully comprehensive consultation and communication plan with all the businesses. It is absolutely paramount. It's one thing to design a scheme, it's a wholly different order of things to actually deliver it, because it's going to impact on businesses. The primary thing is to make sure that businesses can continue to trade on a daily basis, so it doesn't affect their bottom line. How we go about it, there might be the opportunity to start works in certain areas at certain times of the year. So you try and avoid the summer periods where there will be potentially a greater impact. So all those things will need to be discussed and actually worked out. Normally, we would insist that the contractor appoints, there's a principal point of contact. Like many other schemes that the county council run, there are regular updates, email updates we can provide on a general basis, but we can also tell people what we're going to be doing next week so they can prepare for it. It's all about communication, and we have to build that trust with the businesses in be able to deliver a successful scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Clark.
Thanks. This might not be very popular, but it doesn't really matter. I am a bit concerned going through the detail of the report because looking at what is said in here, when you look at 4.4, which is bishopric design principles, and you look at the data for 4.5 Worthing Road and Springfield Road, I may not have understood the diagrams very clearly, but in terms of Springfield Road, Worthing Road, and the Bishopric West, I mean, if I look at the data on page 72, 79, 91 and 90, basically the vast majority of people say they don't want any cycle lanes, basically, and the area should be for pedestrians. Now, if I look at the diagram for the Springfield Road and the Worthing Road, I infer from it that the cycle lane finishes and then cyclists have to proceed on foot. Is that correct or not? Because if it's not correct, then I think this is wrong. There are cycle lanes through pedestrian areas, because pedestrians and cyclists, unless it's very, very clear and physically separate, doesn't work. Now, we've had discussions about the Carfax, and you know, contra flow lanes might work, but I'm not convinced. But okay, if there is 1 or 2 accidents, then that might resolve what's happened there. But it's very clear that the public don't want cycle lanes in those areas. Why are we persisting on providing them? And if this is because of certain vested interests, fine, then at least it should be clarified and clear.
We do need to provide for access, for better sustainable transport access than we have at the moment. We are a growing town. We need to be able to get more people into the town who are not coming by car, because you can't get an infinite number of cars into the town. It makes a better place as well. It's a very difficult thing to get the balance right when you've got areas of very high footfall as to where you're providing for cycling and where you're providing for walking and where you're providing for a mix. We have consulted a national expert on this as we've gone through, and it's really not the case that it's true to say that you cannot mix bikes and walking at all. Currently we have East Street, which I think most people think works very successfully, and bikes and pedestrians mix along East Street. What doesn't work very well is mixing bikes on dual carriageways. It basically completely suppresses demand because it causes collisions, and that causes injuries. So when we're looking at safety and perceptions of safety, you have to look not just at whether or not you might get some issues when you mix pedestrians and bikes. You also have to look at what issues you very definitely do get when you're mixing fast cars and lorries and bikes, and what is overall the most safe thing for everybody concerned. So it has been quite a difficult issue. There are still some design details that need to be ironed out, but data shows that generally as pedestrian levels increase, most people will get off because it's it becomes just more comfortable like that if cycling. So that central space is designed to be fairly flexible. At the moment, the people who are on bikes are riding through there. And it's not causing a significant issue. Just banning people from riding bikes, as we know in West Street, doesn't in itself actually prevent the problem of people cycling. What you need to provide is a meaningful route, and this has got some level of meaningful route going through from Springfield Road down to Worthing Road, and having some consistency there in where you're expecting people, and that's sort of indicated not by a segregated lane but by some by differential paving is helpful in that. I think. I say it's a difficult issue, and it's certainly not one that is useful to look at solely through a referendum of asking a lot of people a question out of the blue about what do you think about this, when on the whole most people are not experts in this. It does need, the devil is in the detail, and that does need to be looked at by the designers to make sure that they're coming up with things that are going to work.
I think the example of East Street is a very poor one, because essentially that is just a normal street, and yeah, it might work there. In this particular case, you're talking about a junction of 4 streets, if you want, or 2, depending on how you define it. And therefore, especially in the summer, you'll get much more pedestrian footfall, especially as you're hoping to attract them into Bishop West. And therefore, my experience of cyclists are that they don't tend to take much care of pedestrians. Now, you may say that's unfair, but it's personal experience based on outside of Horsham town. So cyclists in Horsham town might be different, I'm convinced. But I am very concerned about the interaction between pedestrians and cyclists. Your comments about trucks and dual carriageways and stuff, fine, but it doesn't apply in this case, because here you're talking about interface between pedestrians, people with dogs, children, pushchairs, and cyclists, and I'm very concerned about that interaction. You have more faith in cyclists than I do. Well, I'm sorry, I don't accept that argument, because essentially, as I said, East Street is basically a normal street. So if you're a pedestrian, you're looking either behind you or in front of you. In this case, it's a cruciform junction. So you have to have more, you need to be more aware of what's going on. Has anybody actually asked the users of East Street whether they object to cyclists coming down or not? You may say, yes, I don't know. I don't have the data. I don't have the evidence, which we very much insist. If you have the evidence, then it'd be useful to hear it. I don't hear any evidence that this sort of thing would work in the context that I'm trying to explain, which is a junction, it's basically a major junction of pedestrians and cyclists. And therefore, that's why I'm expressing my concern and my worry over that, because cyclists these days don't have bells on bikes. And if they did, it would make life a lot simpler because people could hear them coming. But I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
I think we do get the gist of what you're trying to say, which is why Clive is working closely with specialists on this. It's certainly not a case of cyclists these days who don't have bells compared with some wonderful people in the past who did. When you get on your bike, which you might not do very often, if you try ringing a bell, you'll quickly understand that a bell does not actually mean that people will hear you coming. So I think that's...
Thank you. I'm not a cyclist, but I am looking at the feedback from the business and community responses as well. And while regeneration was welcomed, there was no evidence to indicate that there was either a demand or a need for a cycle lane provision within the town centre. I suppose that my experience in the town centre is of delivery bikes, which may not be abiding by sort of the normal rules, and they tend to have bigger and bigger bikes these days, and potentially electric bikes, which is quite scary if they're cutting across.
Well, I think there is a national issue about the regulation and control of effectively e-motorbikes, because these are largely not bicycles that are legal, road legal vehicles. But going back in terms of business and other concern about the idea of adding cycle lanes, there is a very long and list of places throughout the UK, actually and abroad, where there have been proposals to improve the access for people on bikes past businesses. They hit the national headlines. You might remember the parade of the coffin going along the street. I think that one was in a Newcastle one, because everybody said the businesses were all going to die because we were going to have cycling along there, and after the cycle route went in, the shop units became, instead of derelict shop units, were replaced by occupied shop units, and that pattern is replicated across the country and across internationally. That this is it's successful, and it's successful for businesses. People on bikes are a good way of driving increased business to your town. And in order to take advantage of the nature of a bike, you actually have to allow people to move through the town from place to place. If you drive at 30 miles an hour on the road approaching town, the car is faster. Where you make the bike more convenient and faster than the car is by being able to have door-to-door access, be able to pick stuff up, load it onto your bike, move on, go to the next place and carry on. And that's the benefit you're getting from that mode of transport that we should be trying to encourage. It's healthier, it's quieter, it's safer for other people, it's more carbon friendly, it's cheaper for people. It is more accessible for many people who cannot drive and may be able to cycle. And as we have a growing town, it is enabling a more intensive and effective use of the town than if we're just relying on people using cars to get into the town. So it's something that we need to do, and I accept your point that we need to look very, very carefully about the final details about how it actually works out and what the compromises are at each point. We're in an unusual position in Horsham because we were a bit ahead of the curve in the pedestrianisation project. That was very successful. So many people are trying to move from a position of a very car-dominated landscape to something with bikes and pedestrians. We're in a position where we perhaps overshot the mark and excluded all the bikes when we didn't need to, and we now need to reset the balance a bit.
Thank you. Perhaps Clive or Ruth could help with this. Is there any evidence to show that people are less or more likely to shop with a bike? I'm just thinking for retail, because you can't obviously take some bikes into shops. Is that reducing trade?
On the whole, you don't take bikes into shops, no. I don't know whether that's what you meant to say.
Yes. Yeah, how can you shop with the bike? We're trying to generate the shops.
By going to the distributed cycle parking around the town and dropping off your bike at that point, or going to the market and taking it with you. So, for example, if I only went by car, I'd probably miss out on the Horsham market and I'd just go to, Tesco's or whatever. But when I go shopping in the Carfax, I can ride in, I can go to the Carfax market to several places, I can pick up large quantities of fruit or bread or whatever it might be. I can go round to the Bishopric market. I can go down to the pound shop, Wilko's when it was there, go on to Sainsbury's, and I can do the whole lot. And it's actually giving a lot more business to local traders than if you just go to an online delivery or if you go to one supermarket. And I haven't got them to hand, but there is data. There are studies that have been done that show that people going by bike shop locally more than people who rely on cars. They shop more often, and the combination of those, that going more often and the local shopping means that they're actually bringing more business into their towns.
Thank you. Councillor Livingston.
Right, I'm not worried about businesses closing because of, dying because of cycle lanes. What I'm worried about is my residents dying because of these cycle lanes. I've had quite a considerable number of complaints about residents of the existing arrangements in West Street and Middle Street, where cyclists have been banned, but they're still moving through it. And East Street, yeah, it's, you come along there on a Saturday, you take your life in your own hands. Now, I've got some elderly residents saying they're not going to come to Horsham any longer because of this fact. So are we actually going to be driving people away? I still am not sold on the idea that we need cyclists to come right into the town centre, whereas we have car parks externally. Why can't we have cycle parks externally and people can walk in? I don't accept all the arguments which the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure has given at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Rick, but you also mentioned as well that better parking just on the edge of town would be, will you be able to leave your bike and then walk around and pick up your bike might also be something that's good for business, but also keeps pedestrians and cyclists separate potentially.
Right. Well, as I think was trying to explain before, when you're trying to provide for the different modes of transport, and we wish to have a modal shift so that people are less car reliant, you need to actually provide for the modes of transport that you've got there. So providing car infrastructure for cycling, which is a fundamentally different type of transport mode, is not going to play to the benefits of cycling and therefore not going to work. But if we look at the real issues about who is killing and injuring pedestrians and who is getting killed and injured on our roads, it is absolutely overwhelmingly the motor vehicles that are doing the killing and injuring of people, both pedestrians and bikes. And it's just overwhelmingly so. And if you look at who of the vulnerable road users are being hit and injured and killed on our roads, it is disproportionately people on bikes rather than walking, in fact. I did an exercise some while ago when I looked using the Stats 19 data at the figures of who was getting killed and injured within the Horsham built-up area, and it's about 1 in 5 people who are killed or injured in that built-up area are people who are cyclists, and a bit less than that for people who are pedestrians. Yet, if you look at the proportion of people who are on foot and the proportion of people who are on bikes, there are vastly more pedestrians than cyclists. But it's still the cycles that are actually getting disproportionately killed and injured, which is one of the motivating factors to help give people an access into and across the town centre by bike, because it's a fundamental part of trying to provide for active travel within our town. The town is the key node in our district, or in our town, the town centre. It's the key node for the routes. If you want to go from north to south or east to west or any of the other combinations, those desire lines go through the town centre. So you cannot provide for that better cycling infrastructure and help those people who would like to not be reliant on cars to be self-reliant if you completely ignore the town centre.
Councillor Livingston, would you like to come back on that first?
Yeah. First of all, I acknowledge that more people get killed by motor cars than cyclists, and that's probably because there's a lot more motor cars than cyclists. But we're mixing pedestrians with cyclists. We're increasing the risk on here. Now, I work with risk, and we look as low as reasonably practical. This is not as low as reasonably practical. To separate them so that there are different avenues completely, and they haven't got to cross each other, is a way of doing it. I'm not sold on the fact that a cyclist has got to cycle through town. The town is a walkable area. The bikes can be left at various points, in secure locations possibly, and people can walk safely and mingle. At the moment, it's chaos with these delivery bicycles, cyclists with their electric bicycles, with school children during the school holidays. You know, I nearly got knocked down. But one resident has complained very vehemently to me about, you know, he's 85 and his wife is, I think, about 82 or so, how they were nearly, you know, very seriously injured. They had to move quicker than they've had for the last 20 years, he said. But we can't expect us all to do that. So I still, with all due respect to the Cabinet member, I'm still not satisfied with this scheme to have the cyclists mingle directly with pedestrians.
I think we need to be, to some extent, data-led here. And if you look at who is killing the pedestrians and injuring pedestrians on pavements, places of safety, it actually is drivers. It's not cyclists. So you have got a complicated system of different road users who are interacting here. And there are, each person is posing some level of risk and is subject to some level of risk. And you can't simply say that because there is a risk to a pedestrian from a cyclist, that one risk outweighs all the other risks in the system, many of which are actually in a far greater magnitude. And in particular, if you want to cycle into town, your alternative to going through the town centre is going around the town centre on a dual carriageway, which I know that there are many very competent and enthusiastic people who ride bikes who actively avoid doing that. So you have to also look at that risk and weigh that against the risks on the other side.
I think what's coming across is sort of nobody's against cyclists or pedestrians. It's just that the mixing of the two and encouraging people still to cycle into Horsham is preferable, but parking on the edge, that's the sort of thing I'm getting. Yeah. I'm going to move along a little bit quicker because we've got quite a few questions still to go ahead. I think it was Sam next. I can't spell him.
Mine is really just echoing what everybody else is saying. I think the overwhelming comments from the survey and within the room is that while we value cycling and we really share your passion for cycling, we're just not convinced that in this particular zone it's the right thing. Thank you.
Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would echo that, and I think we're conflating two issues here.
Yes.
In a pedestrian area, cars are not going to be killing anyone on a pavement, but the cycles will. If you're there with young grandchildren, they do not walk in a straight line. They go over there at the drop of a hat. A cyclist couldn't stop, even if they wanted to, and 9 out of 10 of them are in the village. If I've got my grandchildren with me, it's hell if there's a cyclist coming down the lane, because they want to get from one end to the other as quickly as possible. In a pedestrian area, they should park their bikes at the edge and enjoy the town. And if you're going to go shopping, I walk through the town and you can carry your shopping as easily as you can on a bicycle, probably more easily because you haven't got to worry about the stabilisation.
Thank you. Any response on that?
Well, I would say that it sounds very easy to say I support cycling, but not here. But every time you say I support cycling, but not here, it means I'm not supporting cycling. And when you say you can park and walk, that does go against the guidance, national guidance on how you should provide for cycling. And that's for a number of reasons. One is that it simply starts to make that as a mode of transport. It disadvantages it really substantially in terms of time and convenience. And secondly, it actually makes it inaccessible for people with mobility difficulties. And that is not at all helpful, and it is against national guidance. So when we're looking at it's how we do it, and we will continue to look carefully at the exact design details of how we do this, but it is possible to do it. It is being done in other places. Horsham is not, although it's a unique and special place, Horsham is not so unique that this is something that is technically not possible to do in Horsham whilst being able to do it in other places.
Thank you. Sorry, do you want to come back on that first?
Can I just come back quickly on that? If you read all the consultation responses, they don't bear out what you're saying. They bear out that people don't want the cyclists mixing with the pedestrians, and it is truly unique. Horsham is fabulous. And pedestrians like to walk, they like to wander from one side to the other. When you're shopping and you're not focused in a supermarket, you just wander around, and especially if you've got a large family, you're all over the shop. And you can't take account of cyclists coming through the middle. You just can't. And if we're going to have a consultation, then we really need to take note of what people say.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to echo the points that have been made by other councillors here. I too have concerns regarding the current proposal with the cycle lanes. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. To be perfectly honest, I understand, of course, that overall cars will kill more people than cyclists, but it isn't comparable because it's already a pedestrianised area, so you have no cars moving through that area. So you're comparing apples and oranges there, to be perfectly honest. Coming back to the consultation responses, as we say here, we part of the scope of this project is to open up the area which has been underused, and I am supportive of that overall. But you risk undermining that with what you're currently proposing, because as in the consultation responses on page 26, 5.41, 53% of respondents from your Horsham survey stated that cycling in a pedestrianised area made them feel either extremely unsafe or unsafe, with priority being to improve pedestrian areas and wayfinding. So you risk actually driving more people away from the town in comparison to who you're going to bring in through cycling. I mean, the cabinet member made the point that, well, people cycling, if cycling access was made easier through the town, could do their shopping and things. I hardly see anybody on a bicycle doing a lot of shopping. You don't go retail shopping with a bicycle. If you haven't got a car, most people will probably use the bus or walk in, because, I mean, you know, you're not going to be carrying huge heavy items on bicycles. Some may do it, but it's probably a very small minority. If you do, cabinet member, I applaud you, because it's a skill that not many people have, to balance huge items on bicycles. The other point that I wanted to raise, which I don't think anyone's raised yet as well, is the area off Springfield Road between the Lynn Cross and the old Wilco building. There's a lot going on there. So if you're talking about adding a cycle lane there as well, the other point that no one's mentioned is there's actually no parking restrictions there either. So that also adds to the complexity. You have cars parking there at the moment. And I think that's an oversight as well, because there's going to be so much going on there. I mean, as other colleagues have already expanded upon, if you've got kids and young families and things, there's so much people are watching out for. There's so much going on there. I just can't see that is going to be safe long term, and especially as it's been said, I think I'm not anti-cycling at all. I think it's an unfair comment to say, because there's concerns being raised in this particular instance, that you're not supporting cycling, because I don't think that's correct. I think it's getting the balance right, and I don't think the balance is being met here in these proposals, and it almost feels like we're shoehorning it in. And I know the cabinet member has referred to evidence and studies, but I haven't seen any of that evidence, and it would have been good if it had been able to be provided tonight. If it can be provided still, I'd love to see it, because I'm not convinced in that respect. So point number one as well is anything going to be looked at in terms of the parking restrictions in that area as well, because I think that's also just adding to the complexity. And also, as you say, if you've got 53% is a large percentage of people that have been surveyed that are saying this is making me uneasy. And so what is the trade-off? So how many people are going to be shopping who are cycling in to those that are potentially not going to visit as often because they're concerned about their own safety while shopping? So you in effect, what you'll probably end up doing in the long term might not be immediate, but in the long term, actually driving down people using that area where the whole point of the scope of this project was to open it up and make people dwell there, as has been said. But if you've got cyclists whizzing through, that's just not going to happen, because as I say, the main problem is not necessarily what I consider regular cyclists, probably more the delivery drivers, the Deliveroos, the Just Eats, that kind of thing, because at the moment, you're quite right. On West Street, they're not meant to be cycling there, and it hasn't discouraged them. But what you don't want to do is encourage them by having dedicated lanes funneling into those areas, because then people will take advantage and go, well, there's a cycle lane there, so I just assumed I could carry on up. And we know that will happen. So I just don't see the benefit here, and I'm really struggling with that. And as it's obvious that other colleagues are, I just can't see the data to back it up. I really am struggling with it, and I'm sorry if that makes me anti-cycling, but I'm really not. There is genuine concern with this proposal. Thank you.
I think in terms of the parking there, that's a bit of a historical anomaly that's going on. That's part of the highway, and until relatively recently there were bollards there that were restricting access. There is no intention to have cars driving in here as part of this scheme, and the intention is that there would be a TRO to regularise that. But at the moment there is no TRO that's preventing those vehicles, and it's opportunistic parking because the bollards are down. That's a West Sussex responsibility. And I think that it's because without a TRO, they are feeling reticent about putting the bollards back, because that might be in contravention of keeping the highway open. But it's certainly a totally unsatisfactory situation as far as the current parking is concerned. And it's one I think Clive has spent significant time talking to West Sussex about. He might want to add to that.
Thank you, Ruth. I've currently got a request out to county if they'll provide a replacement bollard or bollards. Then our parking services team will actually put them up, put them down as and when required, to ensure that cars are kept out of the area. And as Ruth pointed out, we will be, as part of the project for the bishopric, amending the current traffic regulation order to prevent parking in any other circumstances.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I just want to add one other point to that. Instead of essentially funneling cyclists into a pedestrianised area, and as you say, concerning 53% of those that have responded, which is a huge figure, could we not instead focus on secure cycle parking outside of those areas, so that, as others have highlighted, that cyclists can, if they want to, cycle to the town? But then I think one of the concerns with some cyclists, genuine concerns, is that there isn't enough secure cycle parking, and people get their bikes nicked or vandalised, and that puts people off as well. So could we not have more of an emphasis on providing genuinely secure cycle parking? You get many of these units in towns that you see in the continent, for example, like in the Netherlands, which is a very big cycling country. So it is possible. The storage solutions are there. Could we not instead focus on that, so then cyclists, if they want to shop in town, for example, you've got a balance there, so that they can get to town, store their bikes securely, so that they're not worried about it, can then walk into town, mix in with the rest of the pedestrianised area without worrying over half of your respondents, because you are at real risk of driving people away, and I can't see what the benefit is. I can't see what the trade-off is here. It's something that I just can't support. Thank you.
I think if you look at, if you put more cycle parking on the edge of town, that's not going to help somebody who is trying, for example, to cycle from North Parade to Sainsbury's. Because all you're doing is saying, don't cycle to Sainsbury's. At the moment, you will struggle to find a legal route to get from North Parade to Sainsbury's if you're not wanting to go along Albion Way. And there are other similar journeys where you're trying to get to destinations across the town, or to actually pass through the town, where that problem still arises. So what we've basically done historically is very effectively designed out one whole mode of transport, the mode of transport that's most suited for those in-between distances, which are perhaps a little bit long for most people to want to walk frequently, and not far enough to really require a car. And we have very effectively designed that out of our town. So no, you said we won't have many cyclists. We don't have many cyclists, and that's partly a very good example of the adage that you don't measure the need for a bridge by looking at how many people are swimming across the river. And at the moment, people who want to cycle are being asked to swim across the river. And unsurprisingly, most of them don't, because what they need is a bridge.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, Sam?
I don't want it on my conscience if one elderly person or one child gets injured. I don't want it on my conscience. And even if it wasn't there, what's the council's liability for injuries sustained? Given it seems quite clear, everyone feels this is an unsafe area to pursue this policy.
We've got any more questions? Councillor Clark.
I think the issue is on this particular case of the bishopric. The proposals for the Carfax and Black Horse Way, etc., whilst one might have questions about them, I think generally speaking, most people can sort of say, well, let's suck it and see how it goes. You described very prettily about how you could flit in on your cycle and go from one stand to another and load up on the goods and then go to another one and the rest of it. And my question was, how the hell are you going to balance it on the bike? Because when I used to do shopping for my mother and I used to use a bike, it was quite challenging. And you can flit from one to the other and lock it up on a secure site, but then you're shopping and get nicked. So I don't actually subscribe to the picture that you were painting about. Your comment about more local shopping, actually, I would have said pedestrian shopping and people on foot will exactly achieve the same thing. So I don't accept your pink tinted spectacles of how people use bicycles, if I can put it that way. I think all the other points have been made by the other members, so I won't dwell on it. I think, as I said, Carfax and Bishopric, Carfax and Black Horse Way, yeah, okay. But that particular location, I think, if I may, I think you guys need to look at it again. And you said, well, there's no direct route from North Parade to Sainsbury's. Yes, there is. You come down as proposed, you get off your bike, you walk across the square and then get on your bike and go again. And it doesn't delay you much, but at least you don't knock anybody down.
Do I have any more comments? Okay. First of all, appreciate all the work that's been done on this project. Thank you, and the passion. And I think the regeneration is really welcomed within Horsham. I think it's clear from tonight we don't necessarily agree on all the points, but thank you also for addressing the e-petition as well, Clive. The committee has recommended to note the contents of this report at this stage. So I think noted. Councillor Jeffrey.
Just in response to that, Chair, is there going to be any scope to actually present this feedback directly to the Cabinet if this comes before the Cabinet again? Just as Chair, are you planning, would you be willing to present these comments and feedback from this committee to the Cabinet if it came to that?
I will do, thank you. Okay, that concludes item number 9. I think the rest of them are quite quick. Item number 10 is an update from task and finish groups. To receive an update from task and finish groups, we have the S106 non-financial task and finish group, which met 18th of August, I think it was. And I understand that as responsibilities lie with others, such as West Sussex County Council, the group will meet with other parties. I was going to ask Councillor Clark quickly if you have anything else you'd like to add to that.
No, thank you, Chairman. We're just, because of the constipation in the calendar, we have to delay until October and then we'll get third parties in. It's also worth noting that one of the things that came out at planning last night highlighted another item for that committee to look at, which has been flagged into officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have 2, possibly 3 other task and finish proposals at a very early stage at the moment. One was a potential licensing procedural gap regarding fire safety checks proposed by Councillor Grant. This will come forward at a later date. He's currently away at the moment. We've also had mooted, although I've not received any formal proposal yet, domestic battery storage, for example, solar and bike battery storage. Again, that's been floated, but I haven't received a formal proposal yet. And we also have one potentially boiling under about some potential changes or recommendations planning. Again, it's not been formal proposal yet, but I just thought I'd give you an update. Does anybody else have any comments on task and finish groups or any proposals at this stage? Okay, thank you. Item number 11, work programme, page 125 of your pack, is a table of the work programme for this committee 25-26. In addition to our standard key items, we also have a few other key items. I want to raise the point. I think several of us were at the meeting earlier with Neil Durkin, and he will be attending at the November meeting, Crime and Disorder Annual Update. So please put that in your diary, 5th of November. And if you've got any questions in advance, please sort of think about those so we can have a productive meeting when he attends. Does any other committee member have any questions or comments about our work programme? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the crime and disorder, where Neil Durkin is attending, there was efforts, I think, to get the Police and Crime Commissioner down. Is there any other police representatives on a wider scope than the neighbourhood policing team that are planning to attend that? Have we been successful in any attempts there?
I understand Katie Bourne has declined attending, but potentially Neil Durkin's superior, don't know his name.
James Davis.
James Davidson has been invited.
He's been invited. James has been invited, but we haven't had a confirmation as yet. Thank you. Anything else anybody would like to bring forward onto our policy and scrutiny committees? Please let me know. Thank you. Item number 12, Cabinet Forward Plan, page 128 to 129 of your pack, is also a link in the agenda. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring forward? Councillor Clark.
Just to mention that the Cabinet Forward Plan does not cover everything. So basically, officer decisions, cabinet member decisions are also part of the overview and scrutiny remit. Those are published separately, but just to let you know that there is more than just that list.
Thank you for the clarification. Then it just brings us on to item number 13, urgent business. Don't believe we have any of that. So at 7:42, I bring this meeting of committees in place to a close. Thank you for attending and have a safe journey home.